Hello and welcome to another War Thunder video, and today we're going to be looking at the guns of the Imperial Japanese Navy. And we're going to be starting off with a gun that we actually looked at in the last video, the Type 89 and the Type 97 30 caliber machine gun or 7.7mm machine gun. Now yes, technically I didn't actually look at this in the previous video, however it is the exact same as the Vickers E in terms of statistics and effectiveness and yada yada yada. It's exactly the same as the Vickers E. So the gun that we saw at like 1.0 for Britain, unlike the Nimrod, the Fury, and whatnot, it's exactly the same gun. So the rate of fire is exactly the same. Like I said, 900 rounds a minute. The belts are exactly the same, as is the ammunition that you're firing. So the ballistics are all exactly the same as on the Vickers E. Overall, there you go. Not a very good gun. Additionally, the Type 89 machine gun is the Army machine gun. The Type 97 is the one used by the Japanese Navy. Just quickly to kind of touch on this before I go too deep into the details. The Japanese Army and the Japanese Navy at this time were not very friendly with each other, to put it lightly. And as a result, they kind of went down their own paths as far as, design period went across the board for aviation. They did kind of converge on some things, like they used similar engines, for example, because that's what they had. Some of the guns are fairly similar, although not very many. So yeah, overall, there is a split between the Japanese Navy and the Japanese Army as far as, as far as aircraft design goes in general. But particularly for this series, the guns, not only in terms of their design, but also how they function. So yeah, as far as these two 7.7mm machine guns go, they are exactly the same, thank God. As far as what they are mounted to, you have the Key 10, the F1M, the A5M, the A6M 2, 3, and 5, with the exception of the M5 Hey, the N1K1, the J2M2, the Key 32, the Key 27, the J1N1, the Key 43-1, just the first one. And you get those stock. In the next segment we're going to look at, we're going to see that those are going to get upgraded. So yeah, the Key 43-1 stock anyway. The D4 or the D3A, the B6N mod 11, so the first of the B6Ns that you get. The D4Ys, the Key 44-1, and the Key 61 Co. So a fair number of planes are going to get these guns. You're also going to get these on one plane at Tier 4. So you're going to technically see this gun from Tier 1 all the way through to Tier 4. That's going to be the N1K1JA. So both of the N1K1s get this gun. As far as ammo loads go, they're kind of all over the place. The A6M3 and 5 have 700 rounds. A6M2s have 680. The D4Y1 and 2, as well as the J1N1, have 600 rounds per gun anyway. The N1K1s and the J2M2 have 550. The D4Y3 and the Key 61 Co have 400. The Key 10s have 450. Obviously, if anyone knows what the Key 32 is, well, a piece of junk. It only has 200 rounds, which in one gun out on the wing, which is pretty terrible. And then the F1M, the Key 27, the A5M, the Key 43, and the Key 44 all have 500 rounds per gun. So the Zeros definitely have the most amount of ammo for these guns. However, they're still only 7.7mm machine guns with fairly low velocity and fairly poor rate of fire. So yeah, before I ramble on too much, let's go ahead and show you what these look like in practice. All right, so the Type 87 or the Type 89/97 7.7 millimeter machine guns. Well, like I said in the hangar segment, these are exactly the same as the Vickers E that you looked at in the previous video. So to echo what I said in that video, well, the damage is poor, the rate of fire is crap, and the ballistics are somehow worse. Just like the Vickers E, the only thing that these guns are good at is shooting at biplanes and, well, planes like the A5M4, the Key 10, the Key 27, and to a degree the D4Y as well. Or the D3A, I should say. Just sitting behind planes and merrily plinking along until they eventually die and you run out of ammo trying to get 2 or 3 kills. Yeah, these are not very good guns. There's really nothing good about them aside from, well, again, ammo load, for the most part anyway. You do have, on average, less ammo than you did with the British, which does suck, but hey, at the very least, the Zeros do have a fairly decent ammo load. And that's really the only saving grace, is just the ammo load on the Zeros. There really is nothing good about these guns. Everything about them is horrible. Every other 30 caliber machine gun in the game is better or on par, and there's nothing good I can say about these things. There really isn't anything. Against biplanes, of course, like I said, they're at least workable, they're at least usable. Against everything else, all they're going to do is put holes in engines and mildly annoy whatever you're shooting at. So just forget these things exist. Just use stealth and forget they exist. Alright, so now on to, well, one of 2 50 cals that the Japanese have on offer. This is going to be the Ho 103 machine gun, 12.7 millimeters in caliber. And it's, well, it's an army cannon, or an army gun. So you're only going to find it on Japanese army planes. The rate of fire is going to be 900 rounds a minute, which for a 50 cal is pretty decent. Ammo loads we'll get to in a second. As far as the planes that it is on the Key 43s, all of them. The Key 45, Otsu, and Ko. The Ko being the one here. Otsu is in the lineup. We'll have a look at that one later. It's on all of the Key 61s, the Key 100s, the Key 44s, and the Key 84s. Well, actually, the Key 84 Ko is the only one that has this gun. All of the Key 44s, though. So, yeah. Ammo loads. 250 rounds. The gun is a standard ammo load. That's going to be on pretty much everything. The exceptions are going to be the Key 45 and the Key 84 at 350 rounds per gun, as we see here. Right there. 350 rounds per gun, 700 total. Up there, you can do the math. As well as the Key 43-1, which has 270. If I can pull up my Key 43 here. Customization. There we go, 270 rounds per gun. And by the way, this is going to be the stock configuration with the two Type 89 machine guns. However, as you can see by the Otsu and the Hei mod right here, you can switch both of those out for a pair of 50 cals, which I highly advise you do. Yeah, that out of the way. Let's go ahead and look at the belts, which are fairly decent for once. The default belt is not, however, APT, APHE. Uni is AP, or 2 AP, and IAI. Air is AP, IAI, HE, IAI. Tracers is, well, all AP, APT, AP, APT. And stealth is AP. Well, it's the same as the air targets, really, except instead of being APT, the leading round is just AP. As far as what you want to load, either air or stealth, depending on your personal preference. They are the same functionally, so it really doesn't matter. As far as the ballistics, the AP and the APT both share in 780 meters per second a muzzle velocity. If it were 870, that would be amazing, but sadly it is not. In fact, actually, all of these rounds have a velocity of 780. The HE round here is a little bit underwhelming. Explosive mass of 0.6 grams for a TNT equivalent of 1 gram of TNT, which does kind of suck. However, as you can see right here, it does, at least against lighter skinned planes, do a fair bit of damage. The IAI, on the other hand, is definitely going to punch well above its weight. 1.8 grams of explosive filler, 3.06 grams TNT equivalent, which for a machine gun at 900 rounds a minute is absolutely stupid. On the face of it, as you can see here, it doesn't really do as much damage as you think. However, it does add up for sure. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and show you what they look like in practice. Alright, so the HO 103 50 caliber machine gun. Oh my god, is this an improvement over that shitty 7.7? So, yeah, unfortunately, it's only going to be for the Japanese Army, because, of course, the Japanese Navy and Japanese Army at this time period got along even worse than your average couple of siblings. So, yeah, these guns are far better than those shitty 7.7s. They're also far better than what the Italians have to offer with their Beretta 12.7. Having 900 rounds per minute rate of fire with basically the same velocity means that, well, it's a far better gun. On top of that, you have much more explosive filler, which is also very, very nice. Well, much more explosive filler with more rounds, which is just miles ahead of the Italians. The downsides are, of course, going to be the low muzzle velocity as well as a relatively limited ammo load. Of course, most of the planes that you're going to get this gun on only have 125 rounds, which is not very good. At least that's 125 rounds per gun, by the way. That's not very good. And you are definitely going to feel that if you are very lenient with your trigger time. So you do want to keep that in mind. However, if you do manage to get hits on things, they will die very, very quickly. They are not entirely, like, they're not the most reliable guns in the world. However, they do still get the job done most of the time. Alright, so we're back to the A6M5 real quick to have a look at the Type 3 13.2mm machine gun. So this is only going to be on 5 planes in the entire game. However, before we do that, there's the rate of fire, 800 rounds per minute, which is fairly good, especially for this caliber of a gun. So anyway, what planes do we have? We have the A7M1 and 2, the A6M5 Otsu and Hei, as well as the A6M6. So yeah, not very many planes have this gun. As far as the ammo loads go, the zeros, so the A6M5, Otsu Hei, and the M6 all have 230 rounds in the nose, and there's only the one gun in the nose on all 3. So as we saw in the previous, well, with the Type 89/97, the other gun in the Otsu is a 97, and then the Type 3 is on the right there, on the right-hand side. So, that out of the way, the A6M5 Hei and the A6M6 rather, have 240 rounds in the wings, and then the A7M has 300 rounds per gun. Now, as far as the belts go, default is pretty terrible. Tracer, 2 AP, and 1 IAI. Uni is fairly similar to the Russian Uni belt for the Berezin at 2 API and 1 IA, 2 API and 2 IAI. Ground, again, fairly similar to the Berezin, 3 API and 1 IAI. And then Stealth, 2 API and 1 IAI. As far as what you want to load, Uni, that is it across the board. I guess you could, in theory, use this for killing tanks, but I don't imagine it would be all that effective. As far as the ballistics go, yeah, so the API and the API-T have 850 meters per second. Or no, actually the API is 815, API-T is 850. The IAI, which is really the round here that matters, is also 850, so your tracer and your explosive round are the same velocity, which is good. However, it really won't matter in the long run. As far as the specs for the IAI, there you go. You have basically 2 grams of explosive filler for a TNT equivalent of 3.23, which for a machine gun is absolutely ludicrous. Remember from the German video that the 15mm cannon that the Germans have has basically the same explosive filler, but on a gun that is 15mm in caliber rather than 13.2. So yeah, before I ramble on too much about this gun, let's go ahead and show you what it looks like in the game. Alright, so the Type 3 13.2mm machine gun. This is a very good gun. I will say that I'm going to get a lot of fires in this segment. Of course, the first kill is immediately shoot the wing off of a P-51. However, these guns are no slouch. The rate of fire is good. The damage that these rounds pump out is amazing. The muzzle velocity is spectacular. Overall, these guns are no slouch. Of course, only having one on the A6M5 Otsu is a little bit underwhelming. But on everything else, you have 2 or 3, which is still a little bit underwhelming at times. But kind of like the MG131 over in the German tech tree, these guns will pull their own weight, and they will make up for a lot of problems if you just decide to run these things for like softening up an enemy before you close in with the 20s. There's really no problems that I have, at least with these guns, aside from just volume of fire. The real major problem with these guns is just going to be the Type 99 Mod 2. That's really the only problem that these guns have. Kind of like with the MG151/20 in the German tech tree, the Type 99 Mod 2 is just such an amazing gun that it just doesn't... Like, these guns just don't hold a candle. Kind of like the MG151/20 to the MG131. So, these are good guns, but overshadowed. Alright, so again, we're going to do this out of order, just for the sake of getting these guns out of the way, and making life a little bit easier. First off, we have the Type 94 37mm cannon. This gun is pretty shit. It's only on the Key 45 Otsu, as you see here. You have a rate of fire of 18 rounds per minute from a goddamn auto-loading drum, and 16 rounds of ammunition, which is terrible. As far as the belts go, your default belt is all HE, thank God. 58 grams of explosive mass, 56.84 grams TNT equivalent, and 580 meters per second velocity. Yeah, this is one of those few rounds in the game that has less explosive mass, or less TNT equivalent, than its raw explosive mass, which is kind of sad. You also have an armored target belt, which is all APHE. Explosive mass, velocity is 575, so pretty close to the HE. Explosive mass is 10 grams, 11 grams TNT equivalent, which is pretty shit. Not really any better than the penetration, however, which, yes, this is supposed to be used against ground targets. How, I have no idea. So yeah, this is a pretty shit gun. Yeah, so before I ramble on too much about how garbage this gun is, let's just go ahead and show you. Alright, so starting off this segment with just Key 45 things, because the flight model on this thing is honestly terrible. We have the Type 94 37mm gun, and oh god, this gun is completely and utterly terrible. At the very least, if you do manage to hit something, it dies, like you can see there with that poor P-36. However, oh god, the rate of fire on this thing is terrible. And also the ammo load is terrible, and well, yeah, okay, so if you miss a shot like that, God help you, because it's... Jesus Christ, this thing takes forever to reload, and of course you don't have a whole lot of ammo. Fortunately, you do still have 56 grams TNT equivalent, but again, the rate of fire is just awful. It really doesn't matter whether or not you one-shot basically everything under the sun. It's just terrible. And by the way, right now I'm holding mouse 1. That's how long it takes to reload. So I just whiffed the shot just so that I could show you like what the reload actually looks like. And here we go again, holding mouse 1. And there we go, there it goes again. That's how long it takes to actually like fire this gun. So if you miss that first round, God help you. Because you're probably not going to get a second one anytime soon. Of course, if you do hit, they die, but God help you with this gun. It's terrible. Alright, so now on to the second of the 3 Japanese 37mm guns that are in this game because Japan can't make up their goddamn mind. And this is the Ho 203 37mm cannon. Rate of fire, 300 rounds a minute, which is fairly decent. However, it's a little bit unfortunate with the ammo loads, which we'll look at in a minute. You did kind of see it there. However, the planes that this gun is equipped to are going to be the Ki-45 Hei and the Tei. So the Hei here in the Japanese texture, as well as the Tei, which is here 1.3. That's how garbage it is. And then also in the Hei Tei in the Chinese texture. You're also going to get it on the Ki-96, as you see right there, in the Japanese tech tree, Tier 3 Premium. And as far as the ammo loads go, well, you just saw the one for the Ki-96. It's 25 rounds. The Ki-45s have 15 rounds. So 15 rounds and a very high rate of fire do not make for a very decent gun. However, to make things worse, we have the belt. Well, yeah, not belts, but belt, singular. This is a gun purely and simply designed to shoot at bombers, and good thing for it because it cannot kill tanks even if you wanted to try. Velocity is 610 meters per second, so it's a little bit better than the Type 94, however not by much. And regardless, the explosive mass is 35 grams of TNT. So yeah, the explosive mass is kinda shit. However, it is still, of course, better than that garbage 37 that the Italians have. Yeah, that's not saying much, however. So, yeah, before I ramble on too much about this gun being kinda shite, let's go ahead and just show you. Alright, so the Ho 203 37mm cannon, well, it's pretty crap. It only has 35 grams of TNT equivalent, which is absolutely terrible. It will do the job most of the time, however, it also will let you down on occasion, which is extremely frustrating when you're flying a Ki-45 when you only have 15 rounds of ammunition and this is supposed to be your main gun. Newsflash, the main gun for the Ki-45s are the 20mm or the 20mm and the 50 cals depending on which version you are flying. If you're flying the one without the nose-mounted 20mm or the nose-mounted 50s, God help you. Yeah, no, this gun is not very good. The rate of fire is nice, however, the muzzle velocity is terrible, the ammo load is terrible, the explosive filler is downright terrible as well. Fortunately, it's not completely unreliable, at least not as much as it used to be. However, it doesn't really matter what plane you're flying. This gun is not your primary gun. It is whatever auxiliary weapon, or quote-unquote auxiliary weapon, that happens to be equipped to your airplane. Of course, the Ki-96 here does have more ammo than the Ki-45, but still, the Ho 5 is your main gun. Alright, so now for the last of the 37mm at least, we have the Ho 204 37mm cannon. This is only on the Ki-108 Kai, as you see here, and it has a rate of fire of 360 rounds per minute and 35 rounds in the drum magazine, which overall is not bad. It's definitely improvement over the Ki-45. Unfortunately, the plane that it is mounted to is kind of a shit brick. However, that is not a topic of the video. Anyway, default belt is completely and utterly garbage. It is half HE, half practice. However, I guess the practice rounds are masquerading as AP rounds today because they actually have a decent amount of penetration. The muzzle velocity is decent for the practice rounds at 710 meters per second. Remember that they are a solid shot. And then your AP, or your HE rather, is the same, 710 meters per second, 30 grams of explosive mass, and 48 grams TNT equivalent, which is pretty good. So yeah, not too much to say about this gun. Let's just go ahead and show you what it looks like in practice. Alright, so the HO 204 37mm gun, and I do kind of wish this gun was on more planes than just the Key 108 here. So, to just go over the general rundown, you have 35 rounds in the gun. Of course, it's only on the one airplane, like I said, in the hangar. And overall, you are going to definitely feel the difference versus the HO 203 that came before it. You aren't going to be able to one-shot everything, kind of the same as with the HO 203. However, it is going to be far more reliable than the HO 203. On top of that, you're going to feel the difference in terms of the explosive filler, kind of what I was alluding to there. You're going to be getting a few more fires, just much more damage overall with this gun. And you are also going to feel the rate of fire. So on paper, 360 rounds per minute doesn't really seem like that big of a difference in comparison to 300. However, in game, it does actually make a fairly substantial difference. And you are definitely going to feel that when you start using this gun in comparison to the 203. Of course, the muzzle velocity still isn't the greatest in the world. However, given the increased rate of fire, it is definitely workable at the very least. Of course, you are going to want to watch your ammo load because you do have a higher rate of fire, but overall, I do like this gun. Alright, so this plane isn't in my lineup because yet again we have another gun that is only on one airplane in the entire goddamn game. It is the HO 301 40mm cannon. This is basically a 40mm grenade launcher that somebody decided to throw onto an airplane, and it functions about as well. Rate of fire is 360 rounds per minute, which is fairly decent. So it's the same as the 37 we just had a look at. And you have 10 rounds in the clip, really, I think. I don't even think it's a magazine, really. I think it's just a little strip of 10 rounds. So yeah, not really too much to say there. As far as the shell goes, yeah, it's 246 meters per second in terms of the velocity. That's pretty garbage. A little bit of a factoid about this thing, however. This is it was a gun designed for shooting down bombers, specifically. However, it fires caseless ammunition, which is fairly interesting, especially for the time period. However, of course, that doesn't really escape the fact that it has a velocity of 246 meters per second, which, like I said, is basically, well, it feels like a 40mm grenade. Probably faster than 40mm grenades IRL, but as far as air-to-air concerns go, it might as well be. The explosive mass, as you can see right there, is 56 grams of TNT. However, before I go on about this one at great length, because I do have some strong feelings about it, let's go ahead and show you what it looks like in practice. Alright, so the HO 301 40mm grenade launchers, and yes, I did say that correctly. Technically these are cannons, but really it's a glorified Milcore grenade launcher. It has the same velocity, roughly, and it has about the same rate of fire and about the same ammunition load. Of course, it does have a little bit more than the average handheld grenade launcher, but that is not really saying a whole lot. So, yeah, no, I don't really think these guns are very good. I basically use these things like glorified rockets. Effective range for these guns really is no longer than about 300 meters. You can get kills at that range, but anything outside of 300 meters really is pushing it. Even then, I still really don't like to go after anything that isn't stalling or just going in the vertical like that. Of course, I'm out of 40 mil rounds here, but that is really the best way to use these guns. And sometimes, as we're about to see, they don't even do that very well. Fired about 100 meters, and all I do is spark off the tail, which is intensely frustrating when you only have 10 rounds per gun, and, well, it's hard enough already to get shots on target with these things. Of course, it is funny to watch things blow up, especially when you manage to hit a bomber with one of these things. However, I really wouldn't recommend it for bomber hunting, just because this thing is very fragile, the guns are so low velocity, and you have such little ammo that by the time you actually manage to get guns on target and into a bomber, you're probably dead or will be very shortly. So yeah, overall, these guns are massive gimmicks, and fortunately, the only plane that is plagued with them has a pair of very good 50 cals to back it up. God almighty, Japan, stop it with these goddamn guns. Okay, so now we have the Ho 401 57mm gun. I'm not going to do a demonstration on this because this is, again, another plane with only... well, this is another gun that is only on the one airplane, and well, it's a 57. If you hit a plane with it, it dies. At least I would hope so. So yeah, the rate of fire, 80 rounds a minute, and you have 16 rounds, which is, I don't know. The rate of fire is kind of low. However, for the ammo load, it is, I guess, tolerable. The biggest problem, however, with this gun is the velocity right there. Basically 500 meters a second, which is the same... Well, actually, this round is even slower by 5 meters per second than the German 30 mil. And if you thought that was slow, oh boy, do I have something in store for you. Explosive mass, however, 250 grams of TNT, which is fairly decent. However, well, yeah, like I said, 500 meters per second, or almost, like, not quite. This thing is effectively a glorified catapult, or like I called the Ho 301 from the previous segment, a grenade launcher that someone stuck into an airplane, and it feels like it. So yeah, done with this plane, done with this gun. Let's go on to the next one. God, stop it, Japan, please. I'm not doing a demonstration on this one again because this is a 75 mil, but again, another plane or another gun only on one plane. This is a bit of a theme in the Japanese tech tree, if you couldn't tell. So yeah, this is the Type 88 75mm cannon. It is only on the Ki-109. Has a rate of fire of 21 rounds per minute and 15 rounds. It's a hand-loaded gun, as you can probably tell. So yeah, as far as the belts go, fairly simple and straightforward. Default is half AP, half HE. Armor targets is moving at 719 meters per second, 460 grams TNT, and the penetration is right there. This is basically the Japanese duck, and it actually does fairly well for it. Especially because it has actual engines, unlike the duck. As far as the HE there, 830 meters per second, which is fairly decent, and 490 grams TNT. So it's a little weird in that the AP actually has just slightly less HE filler than the HE does. However, well, of course, the HE has a much higher velocity for that trade-off, at least. And yeah, again, no demonstration for this, so let's go ahead and do the 20 mils finally. For weapons. However, continuing with the theme of Japanese guns that are only on one goddamned airplane, or well, a handful, we have the Ho 3 20mm cannon. This is only going to be on the Ki-45, Ko, Hei, and the Chinese Hei Te. So, two of them are in the tech tray. You have the Ko and the Hei right here. Actually, both of these. And then, yeah, those two don't. And then the Chinese premium. So, yeah, only 3 planes in the entire game are going to get this gun. It has a rate of fire of 400 rounds a minute and an ammo load of 100 rounds across the board, which is fairly decent. Rate of fire is a little bit on the slow side. However, the ammo load is fairly good, so it should be fine. The main problem with this gun is just going to be that you are only ever going to have one. I really wish that they put more of these guns on these planes instead of this garbage 37, but that is besides the point. So yeah, moving on to the belts. We have a default belt, which is a frag, 2 HE, and an APT. Uni is 2 HE, 1 AP. Ground is 2 AP and 2 HE. Tracers is basically the same as the ground, except it's actually no. Ground is 2 AP, a frag, and an HE, and the tracers are half AP, half HE. So kind of almost the same as the ground, but not quite. As far as the stealth goes, that is 2 frags and 2 high explosive. Now, as far as what you should load, either stealth, uni, or default will be adequate. I don't think this is really going to be a gun that you are going to want to ground pound with, just simply because, well, it's really the only gun that you have. At least on the Hei and the Hei-Tei in the Chinese sector. If you're using the Ko, then yeah, I could definitely see trying to use this as a ground attack weapon. However, remember that your penetration is a little bit on the lackluster side, and it's, well, I think it's about the same as this 37, which is kind of depressing. I think for the tier, you could probably do decently well using this as a ground pounder. Do keep in mind, however, that half of your rounds are going to be AP, and the other half are going to be high explosive or frag, depending on whether you load tracers or ground belts. So yeah, if you're going to ground pound with this gun, I would say use the Ko. Otherwise, just load either. Default or stealth, in my opinion, are the better two. Uni, if you want a few more tracer rounds. However, I will warn you that in my little testing that I did before recording, I fired a burst of probably like 20 or 30 rounds. No, not 20. Probably like 10-ish rounds into the back of a P40E, and I did basically nothing to it aside from eventually killing the pilot, which was a little bit more than disappointing, let me assure you. So yeah, my personal recommendations would be either uni or either default or stealth, depending on what you want to load. So as far as the ballistics go, the APT is 750 meters per second. The frag rounds are 883, so there is a little bit of, well, a decent bit of a difference there, as are the 2 high explosive rounds, both 883. As far as the explosive mass goes, they are all 5 grams, as you can see there, of Petin for a TNT equivalent of 8.5, which is fairly good for a gun of this tier, for a 20 mil of this tier, and especially with the ammo load that you have. It is a little unfortunate that the rate of fire is so low, however, and also that you only are ever going to have one gun. However, well, at the very least, you do have 100 rounds, so that is fairly decent. So yeah, let's go ahead and show you what this gun looks like in practice. Alright, so the Ho-3 20mm cannon, definitely the ugly duckling in the Japanese sector. However, it is fairly decent, despite planes that it's mounted to being kind of shite. Yes, the Q-45 is a piece of junk, don't bother flying it. It's really disappointing. So yeah, 100 rounds per gun is pretty decent for a 20 mil, especially this tier. 400 rounds a minute as well is going to make that ammo last pretty long, and to be honest, I'm perfectly fine with it. It can be a little bit slow at times, however, as you can kind of see, as long as you get a couple of hits on these P-36s here, it's going to basically shred whatever you're shooting at. So yeah, I'm personally totally fine with this gun. I really like it. The velocity is fairly decent. The damage that it pumps out is more than adequate. The rate of fire is controllable enough to the point where, for the tier, you can do a pretty significant amount of damage. Of course, it will let you down occasionally. However, yeah, I mean, I think as long as you can, at the very least, get a follow-up shot, which, I mean, mean, you are in a Q45, so good luck. As long as you can get a follow-up shot, whatever damage you did is going to... well, the follow-up shot is going to finish them off if they didn't die immediately. As far as the difference between stealth and uni and default, well, in this I'm using default right now. I don't think there's too much of a difference between default and stealth. Uni, on the other hand, I would not recommend. I did some testing with the uni, and it was not very satisfactory. So yeah, I would definitely recommend sticking with either default or stealth, depending on your personal preference. So yeah, it's a fairly good gun. Definitely not one to be underestimated. Alright, so we're coming back to the Key-108 Kai for just a second to have a look at the Ho-5 20mm cannon. This is basically the Japanese Army's 20mm cannon. I really wish that the Japanese Navy and the Japanese Army could have cooperated a little bit, because if we could have had a Key 61 with the next gun that we're going to have a look at, yeah, that would have been really, really nice. So yeah, anyway, this is a Ho-5 20mm cannon. For starters, we have a rate of fire of 950 rounds a minute, which for a 20mm is really goddamn high, especially on props. So yeah, you're definitely going to have to watch your ammo a little bit with this gun. However, as for what planes it is equipped to, you have the Key-61 Tay and the Key-61-2, the Key-102, the Key-108, the Key-94, the Key-96, the Key-100, the Key-83, the Key-84, and the Key-87. So a fair number of planes are going to get this gun. Like I said, basically, well, the Key-43 3 Otsu as well. Didn't put that one in my notes, but yeah, the Key-43 3 Otsu also has this gun. So yeah, a fair number of the Japanese Army's planes are going to get this gun. As for the ammo loads, on the Key-61 Tay, you're going to have 120 rounds per gun. However, generally you're going to have between 200 or either 150 rounds or 200 rounds. So on the Key-108, you're going to have 200 rounds, as you see here, as well as on the Key-102, the Key-96, the Key-94, and I think there's one other in here, I think that has 200 rounds of gun. Oh yeah, the Key-100s have 200 rounds of gun. No, and also yeah, the Key-61 too. The Key-84s have 150, as does the Key-43 and the Key-87. So yeah, for the most part, you're going to have 200 rounds per gun. However, occasionally you will see 150. And of course, the Key-61 Tay has 120. So do keep that in mind if you are flying the Key-61 Tay. As far as the belts, the default belt is complete trash. HE, practice, APT. Uni is 2 HE, 1 AP. Ground is the opposite, 2 AP, 1 HE. Tracers is all AP. And stealth is 2 HE and 1 practice. As far as what you want to load, Uni. If you're in arcade, you can load stealth, but uni is really the way to go. As far as the ballistics, 702 meters per second for the AP round. However, if you're using this gun to strafe ground targets, something is wrong with you in the head, because this gun is not for that. The HE round, however, has a velocity of 740, which is fairly good, and an explosive mass of 4.5 grams for a 7.25 gram TNT equivalent, which is fairly good. So yeah, not really a whole lot to talk about on this gun. It is a fairly decent gun, but before I ramble on it, let's go ahead and show you what it looks like in game. Alright, so the Ho-5 20mm cannon, definitely from a different design school than the Type 99s from the Japanese Navy. However, still very good guns in their own right. I would say the Type 99s are slightly better, but, well, here we are. Overall problems with this gun are going to be just the velocity and the relatively low HE filler. Of course, that's going to be relatively low as compared to something like the Type 99 or the Americans, or of course the Germans, which are on the fairly higher end of things. These guns are more comparable to a Hispano in terms of their HE filler. However, of course, they do have a much higher rate of fire, at least in comparison to the Hispano Mark II. Of course, the Hispano Mark V is on a completely different level from these things. Overall, against fighters, these guns are very, very good. They will pretty much tear any fighter apart in relatively short order. Against bombers, just because of the limited HE filler, they will struggle a little bit. However, of course, you do have the 30 mils in most cases to deal with those. So yeah, overall, ammo capacity is usually on average up to very good. 120 rounds is pretty good, or 120 rounds is about average. 150 to 200 rounds is absolutely fantastic and definitely ideal. So yeah, overall, very good guns. Alright, so now on to the 20 mils that actually matter. The Type 99 Mod 1 is going to lead this one off. This is going to be on the A6M2, the M3, and the M322, or the 22. The 22 Co has a different gun, which we'll look at next. You're also going to get it on the N1K1, the J2M3, 4, and the J2M5, the Tech Tray J2M5, not the premium one. We'll get onto that one a little bit later. As far as the rate of fire goes, it is 516 rounds a minute, which is a little bit on the slow side. However, generally, it's fine considering, one, how much damage this gun does, and two, how much ammo you tend to have. At least with the zeros, which is really the important part. So the A6M2s are going to have 60 rounds per gun. However, the A6M3s and the N1K1 are all going to have 100 rounds per gun. And then the J2Ms have 190. So the J2Ms have a fairly decent ammo load for these guns, as do the A6M3s and the N1K1. The A6M2, given the rate of fire, you can do decently well with it. However, do remember that it is only 60 rounds per gun. It is a little bit limited. Now then, as for the belts, your default belt is a tracer, 2 HEI, or 2 HEFI, and 1 APHE. Uni is 1 HEFT, and that is important. We will get to why in a bit. 2 HEF and 1 APHE. Ground is 4 APHE, 1 HEF, and 1 HEFT. Tracers is all HEFT, and there's a little bit of a sneak peek as to why this gun, this shell is a little important, but I'll get onto that in a minute. And then the stealth is 3 HEF and 2 APHE. Now, quickly before I go over this in a little bit of detail, well, the velocity on all of these rounds is 588 meters per second, which is a little bit on the slow side. However, if you get to close range, you can definitely do decent work with these guns. Now, something that's a little bit quirky with these guns, at least at the time of recording, and we're going to touch on this with the 30 mils later on as well. But the Type 99 Mod 1 has a bit of a bugged APHE round right now, as you can see. It doesn't penetrate. Instead, it just explodes like an HE round, which means that, well, if we look at the belts again, your ground belt is for APHE. And if you just saw what that APHE round does, yeah, you can see exactly what this is going to do in game. This also means that belts like the stealth belt it doesn't matter really that you have 2 APHE rounds in there because they're just going to detonate on everything that you shoot at, and you have 5 rounds of basically high explosive to lob at an enemy and one-shot them by just sniffing on them. So, yeah. It's a little bit of a bug. I'm assuming this is going to get fixed at some point soon. But for now, enjoy it while it lasts. So yeah, for the APHE, since we're looking at this, 4 grams of explosive mass, 4.84 grams TNT equivalent. It's a little bit more effective than the stat card would lead you to believe, as you can kind of see. You wouldn't, well, although do bear in mind this is also the other 0, so there is that to consider. The HEFI that you had in the default build is 5 grams of TNT and is therefore completely crap in comparison to, well, the mother round, which we'll look at in a minute. The HEFT is a little bit better. It's 5 grams still of explosive mass. However, the TNT equivalent is 6.5 or 6.05 because this is using TNT. This is not. So yeah. The HEFT is a little bit better, but not as good as the next round, which is the HEF. This is basically 10 grams of explosive filler for 12 grams TNT equivalent on a, well, what is effectively a 3.7 gun. This round absolutely will murder just about anything. I will say right now, don't go attacking bombers with a 0. It's not a good idea. However, if you go up against something like a Corsair or a Hellcat or a P40 and you hit them basically anywhere with that round, they die. So yeah, as far as what you want to load, given the APHE right now is a little bit borked, you can run ground if you so desire. My personal recommendations, however, are stealth and uni. Just for that HEF round that is so potent. So yeah, let's go ahead and show you what these look like in game. Alright, so here we go with the Type 99 Mod 1. Personally, I really like this gun. However, you do have to be at very close range with it. I really wouldn't recommend firing outside of 500 meters with this gun. You can get hits outside of 500 meters. However, do remember that the velocity on these guns is very, very limited, as is the ammunition loads for most of the planes that are going to have this gun. Or at least most of the planes that most people are going to be flying. Of course, the A6M3s do have 100 rounds per gun. However, I mean, of course, the A6M2s have 60, which is not very good. And you do have a low rate of fire, which is a good thing in my opinion. However, remember, and I really can't stress this enough, the velocity is pretty terrible. Pretty much everything, pretty much like the rate of fire and the damage that these guns do, in my opinion, is absolutely stellar. It's just, at least with the A6M2s, it's the ammo load, and also just generally it's the velocity is really the limiting factor for these guns. Alright, so because the Japanese tech tree is not a very well-known tech tree within War Thunder, I would assume that there is going to be a very select number of people who are going to be looking at the gun in question here and shouting with glee, where the others are going to be wondering what the hell is the difference between this and the mod and the previous gun that we saw on the previous 0 in a couple of segments back. Well, this is the Type 99 Mod 2, and this is a very, very, very different gun from the Type 99 Mod 1. On the surface, however, it doesn't really look like it. If you look at the belts, it doesn't really seem like it's that big of a difference. If you look at the rate of fire, which, as you can see here, is 490 rounds per minute, which is not really that much of a difference. Again, it doesn't really seem like it's that big of a difference in terms of its effectiveness. So what is the difference? Well, before we get on to that, let's go ahead and look at what planes that this gun is mounted on. First off, we have the A6M3 Mod 22 Co, or the Mod 22 Co, depending on your desired pronunciation. You also have it on the A6M5, the A6M6, the N1K1JA, the Tier 4 N1K1, the N1K2, the J2M234, and the Tech Tree J2M5, the J5N1, the J1N1, the J6K, A7M, and the B7A. So a fair number of Japanese airplanes are going to get this gun. Again, as you can probably tell just by the names, if you're familiar with Japanese designations, these are all Navy planes. Yes, the J2M4 and the the J5N, the J1N1, J6K, so on and so forth, are all land-based fighters. They are only operated by the Japanese Navy, which is a little bit confusing, but hey, just roll with it. Japan's weird during the 30s and 40s. Differently than it is now. But yeah, so as far as the ammo loads go, it's a bit of a mess. On the A6M5 Otsu, as well as the A6M5 Ko and Hei, you have 125 rounds per gun. On the A6M5 Standard, the Tier 3 one, you have 200 rounds, as with the A6M3 Mod 22 Ko, 222 rounds, as you can see, or 100 rounds per gun there. J2M is 100 rounds as well. The J5N is 200 rounds per gun, which is pretty good. The J2Ms are, what is this? 210, I think? Yeah, 210 rounds per gun. I can do math. The A7M is also 200 rounds per gun, which is very good. The N1K is 100 rounds per gun. And the N1K2, I think, is a little bit weird. Yeah, 200 rounds in the inboard gun, 250 in the outboard gun, which is a little bit weird. But whatever. J6K, just for the sake of it, I think is 200 rounds per gun across the board. Yeah, so just in case you ever run into one of those things, it does have 200 rounds per gun, which means you don't want to get anywhere near the front of it. If it wasn't obvious by the fact that it has 6 goddamn 20s. So, yeah. As far as the belts go, they're fairly similar to what we saw on the Type 99 Mod 1. However, the default belt, instead of having HE and APHE, it has 2 frags and an API, which is a little bit shit. The uni belt, on the face of it, doesn't really seem to be all that different. It's still 2 HE, or 1 AP, 1 HEFT, 2 HEF, and 1 API instead of an APHE. Ground belt is the same. Again, instead of having APHE, we have API. Tracers is again HEFT. However, do look at the explosive mass there. That is a bit of a clue. And again, the stealth, instead of having APHE, we have API. So, again, the same with the Type 99 Mod 1. The recommendations are uni and stealth, depending on what you feel comfortable with. However, what is the real difference between these guns? Well, for one, it's in the ballistics. Instead of having 588 meters per second, we're now up to 750 for our 2 HE rounds, and the only one that's different is 720 for the API. Everything else, as you can see there, is 720. The HEFT round is really where we can start to see our differences, like I said. So we have an explosive mass of 5 grams, the same as we had on the Tracer in the Type 99 Mod 1. However, we're using a different explosive now. We're using Petin instead of, I think it was Shimosa or something, or Detonite in the Type 99 Mod 1, which brings our TNT equivalent up to 8.5, which is fairly good. And then this is the real big kicker. So the HEF round, because we have swapped the explosive, we still have the same explosive mass of 10 grams. However, because we changed that explosive out, we're now up to a TNT equivalent of damn near 16.83, which is just absolutely ludicrous. This one round makes the Japanese so deadly. If we just look back here at the planes that have this gun, a fair few of them only have 2 guns, but you don't need more than 2 guns. And remember, the velocity of this round is shot up to 750 meters per second, which is really, really good. I mean, you could definitely have better, but considering that there are other 20 millimeter guns in this game that are a lot lower velocity than that, that is very, very good. Before I ramble on this too much, I think I should go ahead and show you what these actually look like in practice. These little mini nuke launchers. And so the Type 99 Mod 2, definitely a massive improvement over the Type 99 Mod 1. The only thing that you're going to lose is going to be a little bit of rate of fire, obviously, like I said in the hangar section. However, you will not miss it in the slightest, and you will not notice it either. Overall, the damage is very much improved. Just having that little bit of extra HE filler is very nice. The extra muzzle velocity is also very, very nice. Let me assure you, now you can get out to about 700 meters or beyond with this gun, where the 99 Mod 1, you really don't want to go outside of 500 or 600. So yeah, the range is a massive improvement. The velocity is massive improvement. HE filler is a slight improvement, but it does help. So just even having 2 of these guns on the zeros is more than enough to deal with pretty much every fighter or ground attacker that you are going to come up against. On top of that, you do have a lot more ammo. On average, at least, having 100 rounds or 125 on the zeros, and then up to 200 on most of the other planes that are going to get this gun, or more in some cases. So yeah, these guns are extremely potent, especially on something like a zero. If you decide to go with the N1K2, then, well, having 4 of these things, pretty much anything that you look at is going to die in relatively little time. Even bombers are not going to stand up against the N1K2. Just getting a few hits on the wing of something like a B-17 or a B-29 and whatever it is that you happen to be shooting at is going to become spare parts in really short order. As the example, of course, being these P-61s that really don't stand any chance whatsoever. Even just a few hits, which is the ammo I'm firing is far more than is really needed. Just a couple of hits over the wings and they're just spare parts. These are amazing guns. Alright, so now that we got the 20s out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the first of the Japanese 30 millimeters, the first of 2, and, well, yes, I am using this as a shameless opportunity to flex a piece of shit, but hey, if you're jealous for not having this thing, don't be. It's a complete piece of junk. Anyway, this is a Ho 155 30mm cannon. It is the Japanese Army 30mm gun, and since Gaijin nerfed it into the goddamn ground, it is now a complete piece of shit. But regardless, 500 rounds per minute rate of fire, which is very, very slow. However, well, in theory, given how much damage this gun should put out, it's actually pretty fine. As far as what planes have this gun, Ki-84 the Ki-83, the Ki-87, and the Ki-94. On the Ki-84, you're going to have 60 rounds per gun. Ki-83, the Ki-87, you're going to have 100 and... Well, actually, no. On the Ki-83, you're going to have 100 rounds, as with the Ki-94 here. The Ki-83, or the Ki-87, you're going to have 150. So the Ki-84, 60 rounds. The Ki-83 and the Ki-94, you're going to have 100 rounds per gun. On the Ki-87, you have 150. As for the belts, default is complete trash. HEF, APT, HEFI. Uni is, again, complete trash. HE, APT, HE, HE. Ground is, well, again, trash. HE and 4 AP. Tracers is all APT. And stealth is all HEF. So as far as what you want to load, well, unfortunately, with the advent of real shitter into the game, these guns are completely and utterly borked. And so the belt that you should be loading Stealth is completely and utterly borked. Thank you, Gaijin. Please fix the goddamn game, please. Thank you. At least fix these belts so that they're not complete trash anymore, making the Key 84 hay honestly a thing of the past. So yeah, as far as what you want to load, honestly, I'd still just load Stealth over any of this other crap. Uni has too much AP in it, so does Default. Ground is all AP. Tracers is all AP. So yeah, I would just load Stealth and cry yourself to sleep at night when you spark off of a goddamn Bearcat with like 5 rounds. No, I'm not salty about this gun being nerfed into the ground. Why do you ask? Anyway, 700 meters per second is your velocity. Explosive mass is 39 grams of whatever the hell that is, for a TNT equivalent of 47.19. However, that is completely and utterly irrelevant when your 20 mils on the Key 94, to be honest, are just as effective, if not more so, than the goddamn 30s. So before I completely tear this gun into the ground, let's go ahead and show you what it looks like in game. Alright, so the HO 155 30mm in practice, well, a little bit more tame than the rant that I just went on in the hangar. These guns are incredibly inconsistent. Sometimes, like you just saw there, you can hit a P-51 or really any plane with just a couple of rounds and they will die. Other times, as we will see here in a second, you can hit a P-51D in the wing with 4 rounds and it will have nothing happen to it. No, that's not frustrating at all, I can assure you. So overall, on paper, these guns should be really good, right? Well, yeah, on paper, that is. The rate of fire is honestly perfectly fine in my opinion. Some people might think it's a little bit too low. I personally think it's perfectly fine. The muzzle velocity is amazing. The ammo for the rate of fire that you get is perfectly adequate. And, at least on paper, the HE round that you have in the stealth belt should be perfectly fine as well, 47 grams TNT equivalent. Until you actually start using it in practice and you can start to see where the problem comes in. Unfortunately, the stealth belt for the Type 5 30mm as well as the HO 155 has always performed like this. It's always been worse than the tracer belt was, at least the current tracer belt on the Type 5 is what the HO 155 also used to have. Nowadays, if you run anything other than stealth with the HO 155, you might as well be shooting yourself in the foot because you're not going to be doing any damage. And to be honest with you, I personally think that the HO 5 20mm is better than this 30, and if that isn't sad, I don't know what is. Alright, so now on to the last gun, and saving the best for last, thankfully. We have the Japanese Navy 30mm cannon, the Type 5 30mm. So, at least so far, before Gaijin decides they want to upend the Japanese 30mm entirely, this one is actually good, and not completely broken, thankfully. Hopefully it stays that way for a long time to come. Anyway, the rate of fire is the same as the HO 155. It's 500 rounds a minute. As for the planes it is on, you have the J7W, the J5N, and the premium J2M5. What is it? This one here. So, yeah, not very many planes get this gun. I wish the Army cannon worked, but I'm going to stop harping on about that one and talk about the ammo loads for the Type 5. So the J7W has 60 rounds, the J5N has 100, as you can see here, and the J2M5 has 42. So the J5N has a decent ammo load. The J2M5 is fairly low. The J7W is also fairly low. However, of course, you do have a very low rate of fire, and you do have a very high velocity, which we're going to look at in a minute. But first, we have the belts. Default is HE, APT, HE, HE, well, HEFI, HEFT, APHE. Uni is another complete mess. HEFT, HEFI, APT, APHE, into HEF. Ground is HEFT, 3 APT, and APHE. Tracers is all AP, or is all HEFT, and stealth is all HEF. So, as for what you want to load, you should load tracers. And yes, the explosive mass is a little bit lower than the stealth. So you would think, well, stealth would be the better one to load in terms of damage. However, I think this is exactly the same round that you had here. No, not exactly, but it's the same explosive mass. The only difference is going to be the velocity, as you can see there, 770 instead of 700. But this round is borked, so you don't use it. You should load tracers instead. This round has always been borked since time immemorial. I don't think Gaijin's ever going to fix it. Fortunately, the tracer rounds do still work. 29 grams of explosive mass, 770 meters per second, which is extremely good, especially for a 30 mil. And you have a TNT equivalent of 35.1, or damn near. So yeah, let's go ahead and show you what this gun looks like in practice. Alright, so the Type 5 in the wild, how is it? Well, thank God Gaijin hasn't nerfed this gun yet. Please don't, for God's sake, don't nerf this gun. Well, I really don't think I need to explain it. Yeah, the ammo loads are kind of on the low side, especially in the case of the J2M5 here. However, if you so much as hit just about anything, it's going to die in one to a couple of hits. Like basically any fighter that you hit is going to die in one hit. If you hit, well, most of the bombers are probably going to take like 3, 4, 5 hits, and maybe not even that sometimes. So yeah, as long as you hit them, they die. The ballistics are amazing. The rate of fire is on the low side, but you kind of want it. You want to be able to control it. You don't want to just dump all of your rounds into one target. So yeah, if you are a decent enough shot with these guns, you can do very good work with them. And especially on something like the J2M5 here, this thing is just absolutely lethal if you know what you're doing. So yeah, very, very, very good guns. Absolutely love them. Please don't nerf them. Please don't. All right, so finally done with this one. Yeah, all that rambling and one-off guns out of the way finally. And the next video is going to be on the Swedes, and that's going to be the last one, thank God. So yeah, if you did manage to stick around to however long this video ends up being, since you're in the future and I'm not, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.